Hi, I'm Tony Flick. I'm a grower on the Northern Rivers. We share farm 8 orchards, and we're doing a new development as well. Some of the farms that I lease came from a background of being very sort of old mentality, where everything was sprayed out, bare ground, and the erosion was really quite bad. We had a lot of exposed roots, and we'd have a big rain event and there'd be truckloads of soil get moved. And now we have, in our worst events like Debbie, we had probably maybe a wheelbarrow of soil leave our biggest farm. We're doing about 250 tonne a season. We get around every sort of 2-3 weeks if we can. This is our own design. This one we had built to our design. It's very similar but sort of quite different to most. At first impressions it looks the same as any other harvester. We stick to quite a narrow head with the big sweeper, because we can follow the undulations of the ground a whole lot better. Because we've got grass through a lot of our orchards and we've got mounded rows and profiled rows, we can sweep out the drain in the middle of our rows. So we go through, we sweep the rows, and then when we're finished we come back and we sweep all the drains out and sweep that stuff back up and pick the nut out of the drains. That really helps our quality, because a lot of nut sneaks down in there, gets the tyre over it and gets buried and comes up later, the haunches. So I think mainly to have a really efficient sweeper. It's got to be able to drag that nut out without damaging the soil. So it needs to run very flat and sweep right across the soil, with the brushes fairly flat. A lot of sweepers are really not set up well, and they tend to burrow a big trench down the side of the rows over time. And a lot of the issues we've had with some of these orchards we've taken over has been because they've been harvested with machines with poorly set up sweepers over the years, and ended up with some really quite bad erosion under there. Our sweeper looks very similar to most sweepers. The blue lay flat hose is very important to keep them all together. We've extended these bars down a lot further, give us a lot flatter sweep than most sweepers. Our angle off the top is it's a much flatter sweeper than most do. And because it runs so flat, it's very soft on the ground. It's hard on the nut, it definitely drags the nut out, but it's very soft on the ground, it doesn't burrow in. This cylinder up here is really important. It changes the angle of the head, so we can change to the shape of the row and even change the trajectory of where we throw the nut. So we can tip it out this way and throw it up the row, speed it up a bit. And we can come back for a second run, tilt it back, and we'll throw them straight in underneath the harvester. Because our sweeper's a bit more positive in the brushes, they're really quite firm. They're not knuckled back and curled under like a lot of sweepers I see set up. We can run the head much lower. So we're not stirring up a heap of dust, we're not moving a lot of soil, but it just sort of wipes the nut out and just places it across. So we're not throwing it past the harvester either. It really travels quite steady. I really don't believe that you can move nut out of grass with a blower. I think a well set up sweeper that you can run actually quite slow but still move the nut is way more effective, way quicker down the row. I think that a lot of people don't like sweepers because they tend to pull a bit of dust and that back towards you, but I think if that's the problem, then you're running it way too fast and you've got a poorly set up sweeper. especially harvesting out of grass. There's a lot of people, they dive into an orchard thinking I've got a sweeper, so I've got to put the sweeper at the trunk of the tree, and they'll have heavy nut in quite a grassy block, and they'll bring all the nut out, put it in a big windrow parallel to the trees, and then drive all over it trying to pick it up, and end up burying it. Where if you've got a lot of nut down, do a trial. If you're pushing nut in the ground, you may have to take smaller bites and work your way in towards the tree with the sweeper, and only bring enough out that the wheels can handle to pick it up. You might think it's slow, but you'll do the same amount of laps driving over it and over it trying to pick it up, and you still won't get the result. So we use these blue wheels. They pull nut out of the grass really well because they lock in over the four corners of the nut, and it really takes a fair bit to pull that nut out of there. You know, it really locks in over the nut. They have their good and bad points. So that allows us, even if there's a blade of grass through under the nut, it'll still pull that nut out around the grass. Yeah, they pick up a lot of sticks and they pick up a lot of rubbish, but I think if you're not picking all that stuff up, you're not picking up all the nut anyway. We've already done a harvest, and that's basically to harvest the sticks and things so we don't have to deal with them later with the nut. It's quite important with the angle that your wheel pulls from with the centre of the wheel, so that you're actually pulling the wheel onto the ground by pulling down. The front should be at least level with the centre of the wheel or lower. Otherwise you tend to be pulling the wheel up off the ground, and you don't get the same ground pressure. You don't pick up as well in the grass. Well, we'll go over our wheels after each round. Each time they go past our main shed, we strip all the wheels out and go over them and make sure all the fingers are there, and throw out any that aren't up to scratch. You can really lose a lot of productivity by having a few broken fingers like this. An area like this just won't pick up a nut. It just doesn't work. A few bent ones just won't, you know. You've got a lot of areas there like that just aren't capable of picking up a nut. That one might not. So that's a huge thing. You need really straight fingers and all of them there. So if you've got to do another lap because there was a nut there, you know, right across there, that's cost you way more than a few wheels in labour and efficiencies. So if we had to do one more round per round on one orchard alone, the labour cost for the season, that the labour cost would replace a set of wheels for us. We're looking at trialling running a different set of wheels in our second harvester. So it'll go first because these don't pick up all that well out of really thick nut, but they do a really clean job even if the nut is out of its husk, if you've just got a nice scatter of nut. So we're looking at running a different set of wheels from a different manufacturer first to pick the bulk up, and then this one race through and just clean up the rest. Not as stiff, they haven't got the big T head on them, so they have got the ability to penetrate through the nut. They're probably more the mainstream wheel that everyone else uses. We just think that the two will give us the benefits of both wheels, because every orchard's got its own individual problems and challenges, so not the same wheel doesn't work as well on every orchard. We're moving away from smother grass in the orchards. We find that if we skirt up nice and high, we encourage a lot of natural grass there, keep a bit of light in the orchard. We can get our natural grasses back, which are much easier to handle as far as harvest. We definitely like smother grass for our grassed up waterways and that, because it's a really good strong base. But in the orchard it's a little bit hard to handle. So that's definitely something that probably helps us. Is the smother grass blocks are probably the hardest blocks we've got to deal with. But we find if we weaken it out, and it's a lot easier to handle. The other thing is you've really got to harvest regularly, and our main rule is we don't harvest what we can't mow in the same day. So if we're not going to get through to mow it, we'll pull the harvester up and we'll start mowing, and we'll scalp it right down pretty close to the ground, and by the time we get back next time, the grass really isn't such a big problem. Oh, definitely the moisture retention has been much better in our areas with the grass. And you can see it in the tree health. Like, the trees have really kept a good shiny gloss. They've been flushing right through this dry time, where I see a lot of farms that got scorched red soil under them, and really starting to look a bit stressed. We do a lot of work on mulch. We put a lot of mulch out each year, and I think that's helped a lot too. So whether it's ground cover with mulch or ground cover with grass, I think it really it does hold your moisture, so it's definitely a benefit beyond the erosion problems.